Hey guys, welcome to a brand new series where I walk you through my process of using Runway and Blender to create a 3D environment in a kind of new way. So I started off with generating some textures with our image models. I used Nano Banana 2 here at 4K and 1:1 aspect ratio. It worked really great. You can use GPT-2 or any of the other models that you'd like. And then I was able to take the initial diffuse texture in and kind of create a bump map that you've seen there. If you're not familiar with bump maps or normal maps, they basically give your texture a bit more depth and dimensionality instead of just like a painted on color. Once I had all my textures generated, I moved over into Blender and started building my scene out. First thing I did was make my floor, and then I was able to select my floor here and then add my texture. I wanted to scale down my texture to make it look a little bit better, so selected that texture node or that image node and was able to press Control T. I think it's Command T in Mac, but was able to connect it to my principal BSDF, get the diffuse texture on there, and then followed up by adding my bump map. And you can see there already that the floor looks much more real. It has a little bit more depth. Each tile is kind of raised, and that's what you get from adding that displacement. That bump map is super duper important. Moving on, we're going to start building the walls for our dungeon here. This is going to be a really simple layout. Kind of just wanted to get the environment together and then kind of maybe make a cinematic moving through the environment. This is going to be part one of the series, so right now we're kind of just building out the dungeon itself. So I'm kind of walk you through that process. Same thing here with the wall as we did with the floor. We just used our wall texture instead of the floor texture, obviously. Added that nice little bump map as well and was able to get that nice raised feel on the walls there. You can see it a little bit better in action right here as I kind of like move over to the rendered mode and move the light around. You can really see the detail on the walls and the floors and the way the light interacts and casts shadows on those textures. So really important, make sure you're generating those bump maps. Next thing I wanted to do was really add a little bit more of ambient light instead of just a floating point light. So I wanted to go ahead and make some torches that we could line the walls with. So brought in a nice little torus mesh, kind of mushed it a little bit, resized it as much as I wanted, and then brought in also the cone to bring in and kind of give us a base to that torch. With the toruses, I flattened them out, had three, kind of grouped them together, and just wanted to add a little bit more character to the torch instead of just a straight up, you know, cone. Went ahead and started adding my generated textures here, and made sure that I parented my toruses or the metal parts here to the wooden cone. Looking at the textures for the worn metal, I wasn't super happy with it. It kind of blended in too much with the wood, so I went ahead and brought up the metallic value a bit, and also gave it a little bit more shine with that IOR. Increased it up, and then started duplicating the torches here and placing them around the wall as much as I possibly could, getting it to look all right. You know, like I said, it's a bit of a kind of just an example piece, so not going to put too much work in to make it look perfect. But there we have it. Our torches are all there. Also notice that I did not like the look of the wood. It was a bit too shiny, so I went in and raised the roughness on that to reduce the shine. And there you go. You had a little look there at the torches up close. You got to see the metallic shine on the rings, and then also the wooden torch base. Now we're moving on to an exciting thing. We're going to bring in some VFX. We're going to bring some effects. For this, I want to bring our torches some flames, and that's where our ambient light's going to come from. So I went back into Runway, generated some VFX textures of a torch flame, and then used that with our looping app, which creates seamless looping videos. So once I had an animation that I liked here, I went ahead and sped it up to about 200% in my session because it was just going a little bit too slow for my liking. Once I had it going as fast as I wanted, I went ahead and downloaded it. And good thing about Runway is you can download it as a GIF. You can also download it as an MP4 and use that with Blender. I think GIF works just a little bit better, so that's what I went ahead and did here. Import my image now as a mesh plane, and once I have my image in as a mesh plane, I can click play and see that it does in fact animate. but it does stop after about 5 seconds. So I went ahead and gone into the shading tab and made sure that my texture was set to cyclic. That will make it loop on forever and ever, just like we want with these seamless loops. So next thing we want to do is make sure that we key out the green screen background. The best way that I found to do that in Blender is to go over into the shading tab, add yourself a math node, swap it over to maximum, and also a separate color node. And you're going to want to run red and blue into that maximum math node. And then you're going to want to add a second math node. For this, you'll set it to subtract, and you'll add your green value from the separate color node to the top input, and then the red and blue maximum math node output to the bottom input. After you have that, you'll run it into a color ramp, and then you'll run that into an invert node, and you'll be able to adjust the color ramp there, as I did, to kind of play with the intensity of how much green screen you're removing. And this is basically the best way to be able to really isolate that color from the green screen. You can also go through and use that diffuse texture for your animated loop to tie it to the emission input for your printable BSDF, and that will actually allow for your texture to produce some light from itself. So really great. I think there's some settings that I missed here to make the emission a bit brighter and also maintain the saturation that I wanted. But a quick workaround that I like to do is actually just add some point lights into my scene. This is what I'm doing right now. Added my point light, was able to adjust the color on my point light by using the color dropper, and kind of just sampled some color from my torches to make sure that my point light was the same color. And now I'm kind of going through and trying to provide a little bit of a flicker with my point light, and that's basically using keyframes. So you see my timeline, I basically have a few different light values that's slightly different from each other, and I've just copy and pasted those keyframes across the timeline until the end. And now I'm going to go through and just copy and paste that point light with all of those settings to each of my torches. As you can see here, it's not super bright, and to be honest with you, at this point, I wasn't very happy with it, so I went through and readjusted some things, made the radius of my point light a bit bigger, and actually went ahead and deleted all my previous keyframes and made my light much, much brighter. This is a kind of a pro tip. If you're working with lighting, make sure that you switch over to the rendered view so you can actually see what that lighting looks like. And now we have it, a little bit of a 3D environment, a nice scene using Blender and Runway. Was able to use those animated textures and some point lights to be able to really kind of bring the environment to life, and also those nice textures on the walls and floors. Hopefully you enjoy this render of the scene. Like I said, this is just episode 1, so I'm going to continue to work on this scene and make some much more dynamic animations and just make it a lot more interesting. But this is the base, and I kind of wanted to run you all through my process. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any suggestions for what I put in the main room of the dungeon, and I hope it helps. Thanks.